Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the third quarter Virginia 811 membership meeting, our second meeting to be held in a virtual environment due to the current issues that we're all facing with COVID. I hope everybody is doing well. I hope your loved ones are safe and healthy. We really are all, I hope, keeping each other in mind as we're all working together to support each other in preventing any damages to underground utilities, and yet still working within an environment where we're facing a pandemic. I believe I just saw on the news last night that where VA 811 is located in Roanoke, Virginia, in southwestern Virginia, that's now becoming what appears to be an emerging hotspot in Virginia. I think we're now even surpassed Northern Virginia in regard to new cases of COVID. I think a lot of that's also, with Virginia Tech opening up again, Radford and so forth. And, we've got a little bit of ways to go before we start to see each other again in person at a meeting. And we're very excited about that in the future. Thank you for joining us in this virtual environment. For those of you that don't know, my name is Scott Crawford. I've been with Virginia 811 for almost 4 years, and as of July 1st, I assumed the role as president and CEO for Virginia 811. If you were at our last quarter membership meeting, you heard Rick announce his retirement. He's still around. We still see him. He's still serving as an advisor and providing wonderful insight into damage prevention and helping us. We miss seeing him on a daily basis. I'm not sure if he's been able to join us or not today, but I know he would want to convey a resounding hello, and he misses you, I know, and we miss him. But it's been an honor to start to serve in this position again as of July 1st. I miss seeing those of you that I would used to see at these membership meetings, and I look forward to seeing you again. And I very much look forward to meeting anyone I haven't met yet and continuing to work with everyone in order to protect underground utilities. It's been a busy year. I know the locators are feeling it. We sure are with call volume. And so I would like to start and see if we can't share a presentation here with you. You'll forgive me. I think we're going to have that introductory screen again. There we go. Looking at ticket volume trends for the quarter. We continue to see incoming ticket volume exceeding 2019 levels, and we're up by 7% in regard to overall ticket volume. With the pandemic and such, it appears that excavation is still occurring across our state, and thankfully we are seeing an increase in the calls coming in to ensure that people are excavating safely. We also see that our web ticket entry is up by 7.6% over 2019. So again, seeing some notable increases there with individuals entering tickets through the web. If you were hopefully fortunate enough to have been able to tune in at 9:15 this morning and seen our breakout session with Kenny and Jen, and again, thank you both, Kenny and Jen, for that wonderful presentation and update on this partnership that we have had with SAGE at Virginia Tech, with this artificial intelligence being leveraged to hopefully in the coming weeks and months to be able to help us with our auditing of these very web tickets. You're seeing the reason we need this. We're seeing a large increase in the number of web tickets, and we want to make sure that we're able to effectively audit these tickets and make sure that they're accurate. And so this artificial intelligence project that we've been able to fund through a PHMSA grant is definitely going to help us as we move forward and focus on quality. Really notable and very excited to share with everybody that we continue to see a surge in our single address ticket usage. We're up 30.4% over 2019 in regard to our single address tickets. And this is due in large part to what we've been referring to as SAT 2.0, which we launched in January of this year. just on the eve of all of us going home and such, working in different environments. But the SAT 2.0, which was a partnership with ProStar, that really has, I think, helped us get the SAT ticket functionality in people's hands so that they can do these single address tickets and submit them without having to go through and being completed by anyone on the back end. Once an individual completes a SAT 2.0 ticket, it's automatically released. So again, notable increase there. We also see just an overall, with all of our internet originated tickets, we're now about 67% of all of our ticket volume is coming through web channels. That would include SAT, web ticket entry, tree, and so forth, but not involving an actual call, not calling in, but 67% of our tickets are coming in through the internet. And for those of you that are curious about homeowner activity, well, we can definitely state that homeowner tickets are up, much higher than in 2019. And if you look at that trajectory there of what we've witnessed over the course of the year, we really saw that take off in spring, which is generally good for us, as an industry for homeowner activity, starting in spring with projects out in the yard and so forth. But I think what probably helped spark this and move this along even more was it was in spring, of course, that we started to shelter in place and have those semi-quarantine kind of efforts in place. I think a lot of homeowners were at home and they were putting their time to good use on some projects out in the yard. So that has stayed with us through the summer, as you can see there. So really, exciting news on our end that we're definitely seeing the excavation industry doing quite well at this time. At least as suggested by our ticket volume. Some of our statistics over the third quarter let you look at the slides here and see, how many tickets we're actually processing over the course of each month. Here in June, we had well over 140,000 tickets, but we've been able to continue to maintain the standards that we have in place, which is a goal of ours has always been to be under 30 seconds with our ASA, our average speed of answer, as you hear each quarter us report on. And even with this upsurge in ticket volume, we're still able to maintain an under 30-second ASA. 28 seconds was getting a little close, but do recognize too that we have been confronted with some indirect results of COVID. We've been down in regard to the number of DPS, our agents who take calls, due to a variety of factors and forces that are at work. There's been childcare concerns and such, trying to balance time between work and, of course, children being at home, going to school virtually and all of that. So we have been not quite where we want to be in regard to the number of DPS. But nonetheless, everybody's working hard and trying to ensure that we provide strong service. In June, again, we were under the 30-second ASA, percent of abandoned calls well below our goal of 5%. We were at 0.89%, and network busy is at 0%. Moving on to July, you see again approaching 137,000 total tickets. ASA at 23.4 seconds for July, 0.54% of abandoned calls, again, well below that 5% goal. And then again, network busy being at 0%. And then for August, again, another busy month, 132,602 total tickets. And then there we had a 26.6 second ASA and 0.74% abandoned calls, which again, still below the 5%, and 0% network busy. So it's again been a very busy time for us, but really just so fortunate to work with a team at Virginia 811 that is so committed to safety and providing service. Everyone's really come together nicely in order to overcome any challenges we may be facing with the pandemic on our side. And that again continues to be shown through our quarterly survey of those that both call and experience Virginia 811 through a web-based interaction with those web tickets and all, and the SAT, all of that. We did have a 49% response rate to the survey, our quarterly service survey, performed by Joanne Contracting, LLC. And what we're very proud to report is that we had a 100% satisfaction, with 86% of the respondents being either extremely satisfied or very satisfied. So again, service, very important. We strive to try to provide the best service possible for our stakeholders. We have a wonderful team in place to do that. And it's nice to see these results. And speaking of service, it's a wonderful segue to introduce to you what we now refer to as our Golden Shovel Award winner, an employee of the quarter. I think many of you know this young lady, Kathy Waldron, who is one of our shining stars, one of our many shining stars at Virginia 811. But she was chosen as our second quarter Golden Shovel Award winner. And so I do have a video that I hope I will be able to share with you on that, if you'll bear with me. We're going to try to see if we can't bring that up. Okay, here we go. Hello, I'm Scott Crawford with Virginia 811. And earlier this year, we launched a new recognition program for internal team members that contribute in a special way to helping provide exceptional service and also helping protect underground utilities and everyone digging across the Commonwealth of Virginia. It is now time to announce our second quarter 2020 Golden Shovel recipient. And today I am so excited and proud to announce that our 2020 second quarter Golden Shovel recipient award winner is Kathy Waldron.
Congratulations, Kathy. Kathy has been with Virginia 811 since 2002 and works with our members as our member services liaison. She often jumps in when issues arise, many times diffusing potentially challenging service issues. Most recently, Kathy helped with an issue related to 3-hour notices, working with her contact to identify a unique solution to ensure prompt delivery of all 3-hour notice tickets. Her relationships with members positively and directly impact Virginia 811's ability to help excavators get utility lines marked promptly and properly. During our second quarter membership meeting, which had to be conducted virtually due to the pandemic, Kathy jumped right in, welcoming participants and saying hi to everyone through their chats as they joined in, just as if they were walking up to the sign-in table. During that meeting, the first quarter Golden Shovel Award recipient was announced. And through the chat, many meeting participants were offering their congratulations and adding applaud icons for Janie Shepard's accomplishment. Kathy, being the helpful and service-oriented person that she is, took it upon herself to reach out to Janie and get her signed into the meeting so she could see all the positive reactions everyone was giving her.
So Kathy, thank you so much for all you do to help all of our members, but also everything you do to help us internally to provide good service. If we don't have strong service internally, it's very difficult to project a high level of service outwards to everyone we do serve, all of our stakeholders. And you set for us a bar that is quite high for all of us to strive to live up to. We all appreciate everything you do, and Virginia 811 is very fortunate to have you as part of the team. Thank you. So Kathy, thanks for all you do. And let me make sure we stop that video now. There we go. Yeah, so thank you, Kathy, for everything that you do. She is on this meeting. I think some of you might be seeing her in the chat section. So be sure to reach out to her and tell her how much you appreciate all she does. Really meant what I said there at the end too in that video, that she sets such a high bar for all of us to strive to live up to. She truly inspires me in regard to the level of service that she provides. So thank you very much, Kathy. Moving on, if we can figure out how to share the next screen again. Here we go. Okay. So COVID-19, of course, we're all confronting the challenges it's presenting. Virginia 811 continues to feel the impact, but continues to operate. And I'm happy to say that we have been able to operate at 100% capacity while providing social distancing. We have created an environment to try to ensure as much as possible that our team members are safe. This is imperative, first and foremost, because they are our team, and we do not want anyone to be impacted by this disease. It's unsure as to some of the longer term effects the disease may have on individuals. It's something I think we should all be taking seriously. And so Virginia 811 has taken steps to, again, ensure that our team remains safe. In doing so, not only do we protect our team, but we also help to ensure that we are still accessible, that we are still here for all of those excavating throughout Virginia, so that we can make sure that that locators are communicated with, so that we can get those lines, the utility lines, located and create safe excavation sites. And so in doing so, we have 100% now of our employees who are working remotely. Now, we do have currently one individual right now sitting in the office taking some calls. We have the office as a backup should someone's internet go down or something along those lines. But for all intent and purposes, we are operating with 100% of Virginia 811 out of its headquarters and working remotely. A lot of work went into that to make that happen. Our IT team with Debbie Hoffbauer and Rick Marshenko, Marcy Carroll, and Rob Hogan played a wonderful supportive role there in ensuring to procure the equipment we needed and to make sure that we continue to run safely with all that we need to provide the infrastructure to help people stay safe at home. So just, again, a wonderful team effort there. Jackie Stern overseeing operations and all she did to help ensure that everyone was able to transition along with the supervisors. Just wonderful efforts. And it was again, something that you would feel very proud watching to see unfold as we came together as a team to make sure everyone got into an environment that was safe, or as safe as we can be at this time. We've continued, though, to continuously improve. And that, again, is something that I'm very proud to be able to state, that we've embraced several new projects that pre-COVID we weren't even really exploring, and they've come to our attention after we evacuated, and we are carrying these projects through to fruition. One that I'd like to highlight is a partnership we forged with a group out of Raleigh, North Carolina, GEOI, who is involved with mapping. And we have begun a project that should be completed in just a matter of a few weeks that's going to help us with our mapping. Much more efficient way to update our maps and to ensure accuracy, which is incredibly important. The more accurate our mapping, the better our tickets are going to be, the stronger our tickets. And so this is a great initiative in order to take us further in that direction with increasing our mapping accuracy, efficiency. And so again, that's been something interesting to watch unfold, and I'll have hopefully a little more to say about this in December once that project is completed, and possibly even see where we can carry it in moving forward. As again alluded to earlier, and if you were in the breakout session, you heard about this work we're doing with Virginia Tech Statistical Applications and Innovations Group, SAGE, wonderful, phenomenal group at Virginia Tech that allows students to get some real world applications for what they're learning in the classroom. These are typically PhD candidates, master level, postgraduate individuals who are able to really bring to bear on our industry, other companies that they work with, you know, the most cutting edge and thoughtful applications of what they're learning in the classroom to the business world. And so it's been a phenomenal project to watch unfold. I'm excited that that's coming to a close so that we can begin to implement what is the product of that. And that's the use of artificial intelligence in order to help us with our auditing, to be able to state that hopefully by the end of the year or thereabouts, that we will be able to audit through artificial intelligence 100% of our web tickets, and then kick approximately 30% to humans to then further audit and ensure accuracy. That's going to be huge. That's going to help us tremendously to be able to work with our stakeholders that are doing web ticket entry and be able to provide them with even more resources to help them with those tickets. So again, an exciting project to watch unfold. And also very exciting, we have created a new marketing department. This is something that has entirely unfolded since everybody started going home to, you know, shelter in place and all of that back in mid-March. So between right on the cusp of COVID really having a major impact on Virginia up to the present, we have been able to create a brand new marketing department to help get 811 messaging even more in the public eye, to make sure individuals throughout this state, everyone knows that before you disturb the soil, you contact 811 so we can better protect those underground utilities. And if you hear me talking here in that last slide, kind of a vision I have for where we want to continue to improve, it involves three key pillars: mapping, QA/QC, and marketing. I think as we strengthen those three pillars, we will be able to increase even more damage prevention and protecting the public in regard to protecting the underground utilities. And all of that it rests on cybersecurity, because increasingly, especially COVID showing us how much we rely on technology, on fiber in particular, in this case, you know, we must ensure that internally our systems are safe and that we have the protection we need to mitigate any risk that are you know, tied to cybersecurity issues. And so this graphic, I think, kind of reflects the direction we're trying to go and what we're trying to accomplish. The mapping, as I mentioned, incredibly important. We must be accurate with our mapping, QA/QC, auditing, ensuring high quality tickets, and then marketing to get the messaging out into the public eye in order to promote 811. So I do introduce you to Natalie Susi, who's our head of marketing and communication. She serves on the executive team with us. She has an extensive background in media, news media. She was with Daytime Blue Ridge, WSLS, Channel 10 affiliate, NBC affiliate in the Roanoke area for about 10 years. And also has a communications background with Ferrum College as well, providing information for the college. So we're just so excited to have her on our team and help her launch her vision for how 811 can better position itself in Virginia in regard to getting messaging out to the stakeholders. And again, the cool thing there is she's hardly met anybody at V811. She applied, she interviewed, and she has been onboarded. She has started and even completed some projects in just over roughly 100 and some odd days with us, entirely with us working remotely and virtually. She's been able to hire a brand new team, and you're going to start seeing these people either virtually at first, but eventually in person, as this team supports our stakeholders in the various regions throughout Virginia. We've hired Alexis Harris, a recent graduate of University of Maryland, Baltimore County, not Boston, that's Massachusetts, Baltimore County. And she's going to be serving as a regional marketing and creative design liaison, working eventually out of the Blacksburg area and covering Southwest Virginia. That's going to be her region. So she'll be out working with our stakeholders in that region to provide support, to the stakeholders to help with events and all of the things that you'd expect from V811 to give support throughout that region. So welcome, Alexis. We also have Fernando Mendez, who will be in our Northern Virginia region. And Fernando is very strong with visual imagery, multimedia marketing, and he too will be there to support our stakeholders in the Northern Virginia area. Bilingual, speaks Spanish fluently, and we're hoping that's going to help us get more messaging out to Spanish-speaking populations in Virginia and making sure that, again, the messaging is reaching that demographic too. So welcome, Fernando. And then we have Kim Swope, who's our regional digital marketing liaison, who will be based out of Richmond. She is currently in Richmond, and she will be covering Central Virginia to serve our stakeholders throughout that region, and has an extensive background in marketing and advertising. And so going to be bringing a lot of that experience to bear to, again, help with messaging and to support our stakeholders. And then Nikki Turpin, who many of you know because she's been with Virginia 811 for just over 2 years, which it seems like just yesterday I was meeting her for the first time, but it's been now over 2 years that she's been with us and serving Eastern Virginia. And she will continue to do that, focusing heavily still on providing educational resources for our stakeholders, serving as a marketing liaison with our stakeholders throughout Eastern Virginia, and again, providing support to the members and stakeholders in that region of the state. So welcome to this new marketing team, and I'm very excited to see what we're going to have unfolding there. We're already, if you've been paying attention to social media, hopefully been noticing an uptick in our activity in social media. We've been now present on multiple social media platforms. We've stayed on Facebook, of course, and we've now have a post reach of over 1 million in just the past 28 days, roughly. New page likes are up by 144%, and post engagements are up 30% on Facebook. We also have Instagram presence where our post interactions are now up over 107%. Twitter, our tweets are up 44%. Impressions are up 67%. Mentions are up 700%. And profile visits are up 194%. And we're looking at other ways to engage an audience through LinkedIn too. So a much more aggressive social media kind of presence for 811, Virginia 811 at this time. So be sure to like us, to follow along on whatever platform or platforms you prefer, and engage with us in that environment. One thing I do want to highlight too, we continue to use Constant Contact, and Kathy Waldron is always talking about the challenges we have with some of the emails bouncing back. And we understand, of course, cybersecurity is important. I just said that a few slides back. But with that being the case, we do want to make sure that our emails are getting through. So just a couple of highlights that I just want to mention. If you are receiving Constant Contact emails, just make sure that you're checking your spam folder to see if you're seeing anything from us. And if so, just simply open it and allow those emails to come through so they can be recognized as acceptable and that they're not spam. So if you just glance through these points, these 2 points, this will help ensure that we're able to contact you and get information we need to you through Constant Contact. And of course, if you have any questions, email our Golden Shovel recipient, Kathy Waldron, at cwaldron@va811.com. That is typically the email the Constant Contacts come from. We did on August 6th, had our ribbon cutting for our new building. We're still excited about the new building. We can't wait to get some of our team back in there working in the post-COVID environment. But the point is, we are going to be remaining as remote workers for the foreseeable future until we feel safe that with a vaccine in all likelihood to start bringing team members back into the building. We do have a reentry plan that has been formulated, but the safety of VA811 and its team is what is most important. And so it may not be until June of 2021 before we're fully occupying the building again. We'll have to see. That's still unfolding. Increasingly, we've embraced an attitude now that we've recognized that this COVID's going to be with us for a little bit, that we cannot have the attitude of we can't do that because of COVID. We must start having the attitude that it's due to COVID. We can do that by doing this. And I'm hoping in some way this membership meeting is a reflection of that, because we have tried to make this membership meeting a little more aligned with what it was pre-COVID. We had a breakout session. We're having an update. We have a keynote speaker who's coming on in just a couple of minutes. And then also, I guess I haven't announced this yet. If you haven't seen, stay around after the keynote address, because we're giving away door prizes. We're going to have random drawings of those that are still in attendance. And we have 4 $25 Lowe's gift cards to give away, 2 $50 Lowe's gift cards to give away, and 1 $100 Lowe's gift card to give away. So we're bringing in the door prizes. And we heard you last time we did this thing virtual. Lots of you were like, well, where's the lunch? You know, and you know, of course, we were sort of all tongue in cheek about missing the lunch. Well, we're going to provide you with lunch today, because the first 100 that are going to contact Kathy at the end of this meeting, we're sending you a digital gift card so you can get lunch at Panera. So again, we want to try to embrace a spirit of how can we continue to operate and do what we've done in this new environment. And so I hope you're going to enjoy that. And you know, good luck to those of you that would really like to win a gift card. Very quickly moving on, another example of what we did to operate in a COVID world. We did have an 811 day celebration, and we did a hashtag I Run for VA 811 event, working with a host of partners that you see there, including Dominion Energy, Washington Gas, Utiliquest, Columbia Gas, Roanoke Gas, Runabout Sports, and VNG, Virginia Natural Gas there. We were able to host this virtual event where individuals from across the state could run or walk either a 5K or do the 8.11 miles in order to be entered with a whole series of prizes and such, and then post their images running, walking, etc. On social media with the hashtag I Run for VA 811. And we were just so excited to see so many individuals taking part in that. I love the one of the young lady there with the shovel in hand and dousing herself with water after a run or a walk. But people really, you know, they got into it. They did the hashtag, and we had winners. And in fact, we had a grand prize winner from Dublin for our $811 giveaway for that. So a lot of fun with the 811 run, but we coincided with that a geofencing project, and that's where our partners listed there helped us with this. And again, thank you to everyone who partnered with us on this. From August 7th to the 9th, and then for 30 days after, if anyone who went into a Lowe's or a Home Depot across the state of Virginia, August 7th through the 9th, was then basically tagged with this geofencing project. And for up to 30 days, the individuals then received messaging from 811. And there were over 1.3 million impressions from this campaign, over 1,000 clicks to our website driven by this campaign. And that came out to about a 0.08% click-through rate, which for our industry was right where it was expected to be. So the firm that we worked with said that actually those were good numbers for what we did. So we're excited that this got, again, the messaging out to Virginians. So in closing, before I introduce our speaker, I did want to just leave you with a thought as we all continue to work together in this very, very unique time. There's a book that you might be interested in checking out. It's titled Together in a Sudden Strangeness, America's Poets Respond to the Pandemic. It caught my eye. I bought a digital copy of it. It was a series of poems that have been written from when we as a nation started going more into lockdown up until early summer. And it was simply poets reacting to the pandemic. And as I was reading through some of these poems, a line jumped out at me in a poem that was discussing the feelings of a college student whose year got incredibly messed up because of the pandemic and all of these events that were being planned that they, of course, were falling through, as we've all experienced. And these lines really jumped at me when I was reading this poem. The poet writes, she knew there were other griefs, generations of them. This one was theirs. And to me, that really reminded me historically, you know, we are going through a historical event. Almost every generation has some sort of grief that they have to confront, whether it be war, plague, pestilence, what have you, challenges that the generations are asked to rise to. And this is ours. And I found it very encouraging because it reminded me, for one thing, that we're not alone. We're going through something together, and this is our story. And we're all in charge of writing our story. And how do we want to be seen? How do we want our children to remember us during this time, our grandchildren, in regard to how we rose to this challenge and what we accomplished in the midst of this challenge and this adversity? And together as a team, we can do that. And in our sense, we want to unite even stronger at this time to protect underground utilities, because underground utilities are always important. But at this time in history, fiber in particular, it's letting us do this. It's letting us connect in ways that we could not otherwise have been able to. And in many ways, it's driving our economy right now too. So what we do is important. And what we do is part of a larger story that we are all starring in. And so thank you all for everything you're doing. Let us know how we can help. And with that thought, I want to now introduce our keynote speaker, who I had the pleasure of hearing speak pre-COVID, just a few months, weeks before the COVID issue became a part of our lives, at the Higher Ed Center in Roanoke, Virginia. And Dr. Sylvester Johnson is just an incredible individual. His talk at the Higher Ed Center was fascinating. He is a nationally recognized humanities scholar who specializes in the study of technology, race, religion, and national security. Several books he's published on those themes that I would highly encourage you to take a look at. He holds a PhD and a master's in contemporary religious thought from Union Theological Seminary and a master's in philosophy, systemic theology, Union Theological Seminary as well, and a bachelor's degree in chemistry and education. And I think that educational experience kind of spans a lot of what his focus is on, being, of course, the founding director of the Virginia Tech Center for Humanities and the executive director for the University Tech for Humanity Initiative, because it shows he's got, with that chemistry background, that scientific mind, but then as you look at his other degrees, the humanities side. And so yes, me bringing in a poem was not just to hopefully give an inspirational message, but to hopefully in some way, in a very humble way, reflect a big part of what he is exploring. How you saw a presentation just now from me dealing a lot with data, but at the end, bringing in the human touch, the humanities, and the need to balance the data, the logic, the reason, with also our human needs and our human focus and who we are as humans. And so having said that, it's a pleasure and an honor to now introduce you to our keynote speaker, Dr. Sylvester Johnson.
Thank you very much, so much, Benjamin, for the invitation, first of all. So I'm really looking forward to getting to engage with all of you, and certainly want to also just express my gratitude for the work that you're doing as an organization that is responsible for ensuring the development and the security of the infrastructure that makes so many things possible that we depend on every day. So thank you. It's a delight to be able to talk with you. And also, Benjamin, that was a very kind introduction. So thank you very much for that. I want to spend a few minutes talking about some of the ways that digital technology is creating both exciting and challenging innovations and also really exciting and challenging questions about the broad implications of things such as artificial intelligence, digital platforms, and the political and economic and social and cultural shifts that are happening as a result of that. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to share some thoughts with you about ways that this innovation is actually becoming more and more important for our lives. And I want to do so by asking this question: will intelligent machines become human? And if you think that that sounds sort of far-fetched, then good for you. It has been rather far-fetched. However, I do think the question is important because some of the recent advancements that have emerged in digital technologies have actually produced some astounding breakthroughs that take classic questions such as what does it mean to be alive, or what is thinking, and who or what can do that? Where does intelligence reside? And it's made it pretty familiar to us in new ways that I think actually underscore some of the relevance of this. And so I want to show a few examples of those things, and then would certainly welcome your comments and questions and conversation. So this is Sophia. Sophia is a humanoid AI robot that became the first machine to be granted national citizenship. She appears here on the cover of Elle magazine in a Portuguese edition under the title, "What Does Fashion Tell Us About the Future?" Sophia was granted national citizenship by Saudi Arabia almost 2 years ago in October of 2017. She actually gave one of the keynote talks at the Future of Investment Summit that was held in Saudi Arabia that year, where 400 of some of the world's wealthiest investors appeared in order to try to understand what the emerging opportunities are in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, as many of you know, is well known for its petroleum riches, but is working diligently to move from reliance on revenues from oil and to diversify that. And they're focusing particularly on digital technologies. You don't have to dig digital technologies out of the ground. You don't need a huge infrastructure system to transport it across thousands of kilometers or miles. And you don't have to worry about some of the limitations of depletion of natural resources. You do need a lot of capital, which Saudi Arabia has, to invest in technology talent. And if you can do that, you can generate significant revenue and grow GDP. So that's what Saudi Arabia is doing. And in order to demonstrate some of those possibilities, they had Sophia to appear. Sophia is manufactured by the Hanson Robotics Corporation, which is based in Hong Kong and is powered by something called a deep neural network system, a machine learning system that allows for her to be able to engage in conversation. And one of the things that is important for this reason is that she's able to participate in the conversation in a very extemporaneous way and can generate her own answers. There was quite a bit of controversy when she was granted citizenship because like many other countries, including the United States, although perhaps on a greater scale, people have a very difficult time gaining citizenship in Saudi Arabia. In fact, very difficult. People who are not born there are typically denied the ability to have citizenship, but there are lots of foreign workers in Saudi Arabia. But here's a machine who's granted citizenship when they're biological humans who are denied that citizenship in that country. And so there is one example of this raising lots of questions, but it's also an indication of some of the big challenges that come with this digital technology. Something else that's interesting to consider is the way that these technologies are actually becoming a part of the ways of emulating human behavior. So Google has created something called Google Duplex, which is a speech algorithm that allows an AI system to recognize and participate in the conversation with humans. And they're using this as a concierge service. Now, I want to show you an example of this service. And so I'm going to switch screens here for a moment and go to a video of Google actually showcasing the capabilities of this system. And let me see, make sure I'm sharing the right window. I am. All right, so you should be able to see Sundar Pichai, who's the CEO of Google, in this image, and he is going to demo this technology. And the aim, as I said, is to have an AI that can actually engage in conversations with humans.
To make your haircut appointment on Tuesday between 10 and noon. What happens is the Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background for you. So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
How can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now? Okay, we have a 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's your first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
All right, so I'm going to take us back to the PowerPoint. And so what you saw there was the Google Duplex. Again, that was actually an AI system that called in to a hair salon in order to schedule an appointment. And you could see the dialogue on each side of your screen. On the left side was the AI, the machine, the software. On the right side was a human. But had you not seen that, it might have been very difficult for you to tell which was the human and which was the machine. There are many examples of the applications of this technology. So last year, in early 2019, the British produced show entitled Intelligence Squared, which is well known for hosting these debates about big public issues. They invited IBM to have its software system that is called Project Debater to debate an award-winning debate champion, a human champion. Now, in this debate, the teams had to answer a very sophisticated question. Should preschool be subsidized? That was the question. Should preschool be subsidized? Now, if you could think about trying to generate an analysis of that issue and making an argument based on reason and evidence and a compelling framework, you could quickly recognize that this was not a easy question to deal with. But the machine was very capable of answering this question, of generating an argument. And in the end, the human did win the debate because the human managed to change more people's positions, more minds, but not by a huge margin. And most of the listeners, most of the audience agreed that they actually learned more from listening to the arguments of IBM's Project Debater than they did from listening to the arguments of the human. There's some reasons for this. This software system, this AI system, can read hundreds of thousands of pages of text in just a few minutes and understand what it's reading. Humans can't read that fast. And they had 15 minutes to prepare for this debate. So that just gives an indication of the capacity of machines to do something that most people would have thought was impossible years ago. Could a machine actually take a very sophisticated topic, understand the information about it, and then generate an argument on its own? And that's precisely what this machine system did. These machine systems are very complex. Digital technologies, particularly AI, are presenting a lot of very sophisticated advances, some of which are really fascinating and others are quite serious and even disturbing. In June of 2016, one incident happened. This individual, Micah Johnson, who's pictured there on the left, became the first US citizen on US soil to be killed by an AI machine. And that machine is pictured on the right. This is a robotic robot that's manufactured by Northrop Grumman. It was manufactured for warfare in Afghanistan, and it was used in order to kill Micah Johnson by Dallas Police Department. Micah Johnson was a suspect in the shooting deaths of several police officers, and he was in a building, and police asked him to come out, and he didn't. So they sent in this robot with a pound of C4, and the robot went up to him and detonated the C4, and the shockwave instantly killed Micah Johnson. There were immediately huge concerns raised and really serious responses to the fact that he had been killed, because this was not a process of due process. He never had a chance to live and see a trial. And the way he was treated, as experts have observed, is indicative of a pattern of racial disparity in law enforcement. This was a Black person who ended up being killed, and again, didn't have any due process, whereas there are examples of people like Dylan Roof, who committed mass shootings and killed several people, and was actually protected by the police from any potential person who might harm him while they were taking him into custody. But what this shows is that there are expanding applications of digital technologies and AI. Here's another example of an AI system. This is the JAG missile, the Joint Air-to-Ground Missile, that's manufactured by Lockheed Martin. And this missile system is capable on its own of recognizing a target and pursuing that target. It is powered by artificial intelligence. It has very sophisticated cameras and other sensors, so it knows exactly what it is. This was manufactured in about 8 years ago, so this is not even the newest form of AI technology in warfare. It is representative of something that's called autonomous weapons systems. In this case, this missile can be launched by a fighter jet. Let's say a US battleship is in some region of the world, and a fighter pilot leaves that ship with this missile, and they're flying toward a target. Let's pretend that target's a tank in some region of the world, some country. And they could be 30, 40 miles from that tank. The pilot can target the missile, and the missile travels on its own and does the rest of the mission autonomously without any further instruction from the pilot. It knows where it's going. It can figure out where the target is. If the target's moving, it knows how to pursue the target. It can even decide on its own the best angle at which to strike that target to produce optimal property destruction and optimum kill. The human pilot can fly back to the carrier ship. Lockheed Martin calls this fire and forget it technology, because the pilot can literally fire this up and then forget about it, meaning they don't have to do anything else, because the missile understands that a rock is not a tree, that a tree is not a tank, and it knows how to pursue that tank on its own. So this is just another example of the advances that are being made, where machines are doing things that we've associated with people. So this is an image of a piece of art, and I'm actually going to show you a couple of these. This is the first image, and this is the second image. And this is another example of the use of AI, where machines are able to do things that seem to be the kinds of things that people have been doing. One of these two images was created by a human artist. The other was created by an AI. And I want you to try to figure out which do you think was produced by the AI and which was produced by the human. So one of these by machine, by an AI, the other by a human. Here's the first image, there's a second image. I'll show you the first image again and the second image. So which of these do you think was created by the human, by the AI? All right, well, I'll tell you, the first image was created by a human artist. This is a riff on Michelangelo's Mona Lisa. And this is the image that was created by an AI system. This was actually done by a deep neural network algorithm produced by Google that does the opposite of image recognition. They basically fed tens of thousands of images of art to this AI system and then had it to generate something that it had never seen before. So it had to come up with something that was new. When people do that, we call that creativity. Should we apply that term to what the AI did? Can we say that this is an example of creative art? If you were teaching an art course, should you begin including the creations that are generated by intelligent machine systems? Good question. Here's a variation of this type of technology. These technologies are able to generate not just artistic renderings, but also realistic photos of people. So one of these images is a photograph of a real actual person. And another one of these images is purely the fictitious creation of an AI, of a person who has never existed. It's just made up. So take a few seconds and see if you can figure out which of these is a photograph of a real human and which of these is completely fictitious. And I'll give you a couple of seconds, or five to 10 seconds. So which one do you think was created by a human and which do you think was created by an AI system, a machine system? So I'll tell you I should apologize because I misled you. Neither of these is a photograph of a human who is an actual person. Both of these images are actually purely fictitious creations of an AI system. And they work in a way that's similar to the previous set of images where an AI system, machine learning system, was fed lots, in this case, I think hundreds of thousands of images of humans. And then they had to come up with something that they had never seen before. They had to create a person that never existed, that was not in any of those images. And both of these images are a result of that process. And so here again, we have an example of what might be called the machine creativity, or one might say machine imagination, or one might say that we can't claim these machines can imagine anything, but it seems like they're doing things that pretty much look like the kinds of things that we say people do when they're creating. There are tremendous security concerns around this capability as well. We can talk about those in Q&A. If you can create realistic images of people who have never existed, what does that imply for being able to mislead or deceive an audience in some type of security context or a fraud sensitive context? So we can talk about that as well. Here's another example of the creative uses of software. So this is Little Michaela. Little Michaela is what's called an influencer. And when I first heard about Little Michaela, I had no idea what an influencer was. But with a little bit of Googling, I learned that an influencer is a person, and realistically, these are typically younger people, but not always, who are able to influence the behavior of consumers, for example, to buy products. It could be clothing, it could be food, it could be subscribing to some type of service, basically acting as a comprehensive type of model, and they become very popular. And then people want to wear what they wear, or eat what they eat, or travel to where they go, that type of thing, and read what they're reading. Little Michaela is not an actual biological human. She is fictitious. She is completely made up by software. She has 3 hit singles and has thousands of followers on Twitter. This is another. This is Shadu, who is a model. But Shadu is actually created by a British computer software coder who has started a business by creating images or avatars rather that can model clothing and do certain things to become an influencer. But again, Shadu is not an actual biological human. She's made up by software. This nexus of humans and machines is becoming increasingly important in the area that's called human-machine combining or human-machine hybridization. The fancy word for that is cybernetics. And cybernetics has become increasingly important to address serious concerns around injury and trying to restore capacity. So what you see in this image is Claudia Mitchell. She became the first woman in the United States to have a smart prosthetic device. So-called smart prosthetic devices are controlled by brain signaling. Instead of having to physically move a set of cables to activate the arm, a person thinks about moving their arm and the prosthetic limb moves. Claudia Mitchell was injured during her service in the military, and she lost her left arm as a result of her involvement in warfare. So she was able to get a smart prosthetic limb that moves as she thinks. If she thinks about lifting that arm, it moves because it responds to brain signaling. That's because the limb is directly interfaced with her nerve endings that are located in her upper torso. And that was a surgical process that connected her biological neural system to the artificial neural system, the machine neural system of this prosthetic limb. So this works based on artificial intelligence and, again, the machine learning that is programmed to understand and interpret the brain signaling. So when she thinks about the arm moving, it moves in the way that she's thinking about. In a much more, and this is from 2011, by the way. So a few years later, in 2014, this individual, Ian Burkhart, was injured in a diving accident. And Ian Burkhart ended up severing his spinal cord. As a result of that diving accident, he was unable to have movement below the neck. Now, in this image, in this photograph, which was taken about a year or two after that, he's playing a guitar. And this is a special kind of guitar. This is a therapeutic guitar. So you don't have strings on it, there are these buttons. But he's playing that with his right hand. Now, you may be thinking, hold on a second, Sylvester, you just told us that he was paralyzed from the neck down. How is he playing a guitar? Well, that's a great question. He has a brain implant, a brain chip that is implanted and allows him to control his arm, because when he thinks of moving that right arm, the brain chip, which is AI enabled, it interprets the brain signal. It relays those signals to wireless receptors that are located on a sleeve on his right arm. You can't see that sleeve in this photograph, but it's wrapped around his right arm. And those receptors then reproduce the signaling from his brain. And they send those signals to the motor neurons that control the movement of his hand. And when he thinks, those signals, which are now bypassing his spinal cord, remember the spinal cord is severed, those signals get interpreted and reproduced by the AI. And by the time those motor neurons receive the signaling, as it turns out, those motor neurons don't really care whether the AI is involved or not. They get the signaling and they move based on how he thinks. What this tells us is that machine neurons and biological neurons will talk to each other. They don't get into a debate over which one is really human and which one is just a machine. They don't have philosophical discussions about whether humans and machines can actually communicate with one another. They just work. This just happens. And it is a very interesting phenomenon because what it shows is that machine neurons and motor neurons can work together. So is this thinking? Does this show that machines can actually think? Well, it's not obvious that they can't. So it's something to consider. But the point is that combining people with machine systems is becoming increasingly important for many different reasons. The examples that I showed you, a smart prosthetic limb, that's with Claudia Mitchell here in this image, and a brain chip, but you can't see the chip implanted in his brain, but there's an incision and he had surgery where the incision was in the back of his head, but that chip is there. Both of those things are products of military research. The military is not the only entity conducting this research and development, but combining people with machine systems has become very important for the military because of the injuries that are sustained in warfare and the desire to provide medical therapies to restore capacities that have been lost, but also to give people the abilities to do things that they might never be able to do normally. This image is from the Atlantic Monthly magazine, which had a special issue devoted to human-machine combining and suggests some of the possibilities that are emerging as human-machine combining, as digital technologies become much more integral to our lives and to our world. So I began with this question, will intelligent machines become human? Well, what I ended with really tries to answer that question by moving beyond the idea that humans are on the one side and machines are on the other side, and that maybe those machines will become human. The reality is that some of the most exciting and interesting developments that are happening in digital technologies, and particularly with artificial intelligence, happen at the intersection of the human and the machine, at cybernetics, where people are combined with machine systems. And I often point to the possibilities that are emerging because particularly of military research that can create a situation where someone has a brain chip, they're maybe in special ops, they have this human AI interface that allows them to control a drone or to see what a drone is seeing because the signaling is sent directly to the brain chip or to some neural net. This is what Elon Musk's new company is developing. And it allows them to process far more data than they could ever do without that connection. They can receive text messages or what have you. They can access data storage in huge capacities or huge volume. And they leave special ops and they go back into civilian life, but the brain chip is still there. So what I'm telling you now is a hypothetical situation that, to my knowledge, has never happened, but that is on the horizon. And let's say this person wants to vote. And someone says, well, their brain is part machine. We don't really think they should be able to vote because we don't trust that machines can think, or we don't know if the manufacturer of the brain chip has just basically programmed them to vote a certain way. Right? So what happens in that scenario? If you think back to Ian Burkhart, who already is part machine, his brain function is a result partly of the fact that there's a machine system that is helping him to have restored capacity. Does that change his humanity? Is he less human? Is his thinking not fully human thinking? And if he wanted to vote, would anyone suggest that he not be allowed to because he's part machine? Those questions, those scenarios are going to increasingly be a part of our human future. And they're going to be a huge part of the future of digital technologies. So I'll stop there. I would certainly love to hear your thoughts, your responses. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, but you also might just have comments in response to this, and I'd love to hear what you're thinking. So thank you again for the invitation to speak with you, and we'll pause here so we can have some discussion.
Hello, everyone. Anyone who has questions for Dr. Johnson, you could use either the chat feature or the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Coming in on the chats, we have a great presentation, Dr. Johnson. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very interesting, thank you. Truly amazing. Question, has anyone thought about when robots can program other robots?
Absolutely, that's a great question. Yes, I can tell you that there are many companies now, such as Google, that are already using algorithms to create software. This is software that writes code, and that's used to supplement the work that humans do in some cases, to write small applications or to write part of larger applications. This is a growing trend. One of the prospects that it raises is that at the very time that our society has encouraged more and more young people to learn to code, you take your typical, let's say, third grader. They're getting introduced to coding now. So by the time they finish high school and go to college, who will be writing the code and at what scale or proportion? So a third grader finishing colleges, so that's going to be about 13 years later. This is 2020, so let's say 2033. Well, what does 2033 look like in terms of coding? It is fair to say that a far greater proportion of code will be written by machines than now. That doesn't mean that humans will stop writing code. It doesn't mean humans won't be involved. But Google already produces around, as of last year, around 15 to 20% of the code that they're generating is being written by AI, by machine, not humans. That's now, okay? Or that was last year, 15 to 20%. So yes, machines can write code. They already do. They're getting better at it because the humans are getting better at developing more powerful AI. And there's every reason to anticipate that that's going to accelerate, that it's going to increase at a faster rate. It will allow us to have more sophisticated code, but it also creates some interesting questions about what will happen if, say, the machines become so sophisticated at writing code that humans become less and less able to understand how the code works.
And then an additional question, Dr. Johnson, will the machines become soldiers at a later time? Put your ESP glasses on for this one.
So absolutely, at some level, it is already the case that military industrial states, certainly the US, but other nations as well. Just think of your big and military industrial states: Israel, Britain, Germany, Iran, China. But the United States already has more than a dozen weapon systems that are called autonomous weapon systems, meaning they're capable of acting to some degree on their own, that can identify a human target, can target that person and kill them without a human in the loop, beyond the point of identifying the target. They can use facial recognition technologies, for example. So this is already in existence. Now, I just want to be clear, it is currently unconstitutional in the United States for AI weapons to kill a human without a human in the loop, without some human being giving the final authorization to kill that person. So to my knowledge, the United States has never used a machine to kill a human without a human giving the final authorization. But it's not because we don't have the technology or the capacity. We already have the technological capacity. It's just an issue that it wouldn't be constitutional. So will robots become soldiers? To some degree, they already have, to the degree that we now have autonomous drones that can fly miles above the earth, identify a target, and kill those humans. Those machines are doing the kind of things that human fighter pilots do. So you could say we're sort of already there. It's certainly clear that our capacity to use weapons that are AI enabled, that make the kind of strategic decisions or tactical decisions that humans used to make, how to evade radar, how to pursue a target, how to identify a target, and how to take out that target, to kill or destroy it, that's already happening and it's going to accelerate. And that's just another reason why the technology then raises not just technical questions, it also raises policy questions and ethical questions. Who should be designing the technology? What should be the limits of this? And who should get to decide what those limits are?
And we do have in the chat field a comment from a true subject matter expert, Deb Hoffbauer of V811, who herself did this many years, I won't say many years ago, sorry, Deb, but she points out that the military has had directions of missile code a very long time ago. Deb used to do that particular code in her time in service in the Navy. Next question, Dr. Johnson, what does nanotechnology look like for the future?
That's another fascinating question. It is certainly a form of technology, digital technology, that is going to be a big part, an increasing part of things like healthcare. One example is the use of nanobots to preserve and enhance cardiovascular health, to clean arteries. So the ability to manufacture tiny molecular scale machines that can be designed to go through people's blood vessels. You might take this by taking a capsule and it gets ingested into your system and it helps to avoid heart disease. Or if you think about human machine connections or hybridization, neural networks that combine human systems and machine systems, those are going to increasingly be a part of healthcare for restoring capacities. So think of a much more sophisticated version of what Ian Burkhart had. You didn't see that electrode. It's fairly large. It's about the size of a domino chip. Okay, and those can be made even smaller eventually with much greater precision. That will allow people to do all kinds of things. Some of it is going to be healthcare intervention, medical intervention. Some of it's going to be military intervention to not to repair people, but to give them skills that they wouldn't have ordinarily. Some of it is going to be for learning applications. And that could definitely be very transformative and impactful. So those are just a couple of ways that the nanotechnology is going to be progressing and become very important. That is certainly a big part of this technological future.
We have two more questions for you, sir. First is there a timeline as to when a threshold is reached where AI will replace human productivity to a point where the odds greatly outweigh the ability for humans to have non-artisanal jobs?
That's a terrific question because it's about the future of work, and it's an issue of equity. It's about wealth. Just to give you a sense of this, PricewaterhouseCoopers did a study and published it back in, I think, 2017 or 2018, anticipating that by 2030, digital technology, so that's including AI, but not limited to AI, that's data storage and analytics, for instance, and the physical devices, would create about $100 trillion worth of new GDP globally. Okay, Just to give you a sense of scale, the current total global GDP is less than 100 trillion. It's around 90 trillion, give or take a few trillion. In other words, digital technologies are going to, or expected to, double or perhaps more than double the new wealth that's going to get created, or the wealth that exists in the world over the next 10 years. A lot of that will be AI. And part of that will be having much more sophisticated AI systems that could, in theory, and already in practice, beginning to replace the humans who are doing certain work. So we talked about coding earlier as an example of that. But financial analysis or advisement, there's already a lot of AI that's used to provide financial guidance, advice, as well as to make investment choices or decisions. And that is an indication of a larger trend. Now you're asking what's the timeline? The studies that I've seen have not said, here's the point at which humans will no longer be able to participate in a non-artisanal economy, but more of percentages. 30% of jobs in this sector are expected to be replaced by AI by 2030 or 2040. I think a lot of that is going to be up to us. We have the capacity for machines to replace people. A lot of that emphasis, though, is going to be more about collaborative work, that is, humans working alongside or working in partnership with machines. IBM, this is developing their Watson, they're calling it IBM Watson computing technology, that is working with medical experts in order to diagnose disease. And it's not that, what IBM emphasizes, that it's not that the human doctors are going to all become unemployed and you're only going to have machine doctors, is that a lot of the work that's part of healthcare and analysis particularly, so reading test results, think about reading an MRI result and having an AI that can compare that image to a million other images in order to suggest a diagnosis for that person or that patient. That's already happening. And it doesn't mean the doctors have lost their jobs. It does mean that the doctors or radiologists, they read those results. They're using the AI to do their jobs. So in some, I don't know of a timeline. I don't know that that is accurate to say there will be a particular point at which people will not be able to participate in an artisanal economy. It is accurate to say, however, that we are already seeing a significant, I don't want to call it encroachment because that sounds cynical, but a significant degree of acceleration in what's called high-end automation, the ability of machines to either augment, so that's collaborative, or in some instances replace the jobs that humans have done. That's already happening. And the question is, how far will it go? And more importantly, as a society, what are we gonna do in order to ensure that as we create all this new wealth, so think of that 100 trillion in additional new capital that's gonna get generated over the next 9 or 10 years. As we create this new wealth, how are we gonna do that in a way that is not sitting alongside massive disparity and unemployment and people who are just treated as if they're expendable? If we look at the past, we've done a horrible job with that problem. And so we need new practices and paradigms if we're actually gonna be able to enjoy this technology and have a society that we wanna live in. And if we did that, then it would matter less whether people would be able to participate in a non-artisanal economy and more about whether they would have the things they need in order to have a fulfilling life and things like housing and food security.
Well, it turns out I lied to you. Now there are 2 more questions for you. Sorry. First one is, when do you think an AI will pass the Turing test?
That's a great question. There are some people who would say that AIs have already passed the Turing test. It just depends on what you think is the ideal test. So that video I showed you of Google showcasing their what they call Google Duplex, which is now already available as a concierge service to some users of the Android operating system in some regions of the US. So it's not globally universally available yet, but they're already spinning this out. You could say that that machine passed the Turing test if you had, and I'll just tell you in the demonstration that they did for legal reasons, they made sure that the hair salon that they called, and they called a couple of other places. They called a restaurant to make a dinner reservation and then something else. I didn't run the whole video, but if you want to Google it and look at it, you can see it. They made sure that the people who worked there knew that Google was going to have their AI to call in because they didn't want to be accused of fraud and get into a lawsuit. What they just wanted to show is that the technology could actually function. But if you show that video to anybody and just told them, just play the audio and said, I want you to listen to these two people having a conversation, and they listened to it, I don't think they'd be able to tell that one of those voices was a machine and the other one was a human. I just think they'd assume that both are human. And in that way, that machine would have passed the Turing test. It would have been indiscernible to that observer from a human. So you could say in some ways that's already happened. Others would say, well, you know what? No, we need something more sophisticated in order to demonstrate a Turing test. But I think it's fair to say the technology is getting to the point now where it's hard to tell. And if you've ever done chat before, to get customer service, you have probably realized that you weren't fooled. Maybe you could tell that you were not dealing with a human if an AI were providing the chat service. But as the technology gets better, certainly with the kind of convolutional neural networks that Google is using, and those are just very sophisticated machine learning algorithms that are able to get smarter or more effective as you feed them more training data. I think in a few years, you won't be able to tell when you're interacting with the human over chat. So. And there was a second question. Yeah.
Last question that we have is, will it be able to expand life? And I'm interpreting here that by that I've asked the person who asked the question, haven't gotten clarification. I believe this is referring to extending life, helping us live longer, but that's my interpretation. Absolutely.
I think that indirectly. So indirectly, if you think about the ability of AIs to assist in medical diagnosis, I had a conversation with one of IBM Watson's executives. My goodness, this may have been 6 or 7 years ago. So it was what, 2014? And at that point, the IBM Watson system which was being used to assess healthcare data in order to assist human doctors in diagnosing patients. They were pointing out that the rate of accuracy for the average human doctor to make a diagnosis of a medical condition, the average was around 40% accuracy. Meaning that, and that's an average, so it depends, some conditions are more difficult to diagnose than others. But if you just average it out, that's less than half accurate. That's under 50%. But they were pointing out that with the assistance of the AI, which again can compare any single test result with millions of other test results in order to suggest what the diagnosis is. No human doctor can take an image from an MRI, for example, and then instantly compare that with millions of other images. They just wouldn't have time. But if you're software, you can actually do that because software can handle massive amounts of data and process it very quickly. That doesn't mean they can do that yet with the sophistication that a human can. But if it's a very specific task that you have, compare this image to millions of others, and then give us a statistically significant prognosis, then the machine is just going to be better. And what IBM was already finding in 2014 is that combined with the AI system, that accuracy went up to more like 90%. Okay, so what that means is that just by decreasing errors in diagnosing people's conditions and increasing the ability to accurately understand what people need to support their health, are you going to extend people's lives? Absolutely, absolutely. Someone should have gotten diagnosed with diabetes 10 years ago. They didn't know it because something was misread. The other issue is that if you have an iPhone and you have 5 minutes, extra minutes on your hand one day, open up your health app on your iPhone and just look at all of the options in that app. Now, most of us, when we go to medical doctors, we go in, they look at the chart, and they're like, "Oh, Sylvester Johnson, hey, it's good to see you again. Why haven't you been here for a year?" "Well, doc, I was busy, I was traveling, I didn't make my," "Oh, okay. Well, and I got 10 minutes with them on a good day, unless I have some concierge medical service that I'm paying extra for. And they have to get me in and out because there are lots of other people that they have to see. And they can't remember all of my data. They're just looking at the chart very quickly to refresh themselves and get ready to have a conversation with me, and then they're out. You have to move to the next person just because that's the nature of things. Well, what about the year that I was in that medical doctor's office? What happened in that year? They don't know. They did a test one day and they captured data. Okay, so they captured data with a blood test or some scan or what have you that particular day. But what if they could have access to all of or much of my biological data? My blood pressure, my blood sugar level, my respiratory rate, my exercise, my dietary intake, all of those things, my heart rhythm. What if they had access to all of that information on a daily basis? And at any time, they could look at that data and say, hold on a second, Sylvester's blood pressure has been at this rate for this number of days. That at that threshold, it looks like this could be a symptom of X condition, and we can compare his data with that of about 100 million other people or a billion people in order to make this diagnosis. Would that be better for me in terms of extending my life chances? You better believe it. Well, as these digital AI-driven systems become more widespread, whether it's through an Apple Watch or through some other device, then, and I'm not pushing Apple, I'm just saying they're focusing on it, so they're putting the architecture out there. That's going to improve people's life chances. So that's more of an indirect impact. And then you think of being able to replace organs with AI-driven organs, or to assist people by placing these nanobots in their bodies that will constantly monitor changes in their systems and then wirelessly communicate that to a healthcare provider. Those, in order, or even just alter my DNA. We've not talked about synthetic biology, but when you combine the ability to manufacture and change people's DNA in order to change their health, that's an entirely different level. Or to combine them with some other specimen so that they have abilities that specimen had in its DNA system that now I can have. Maybe it's resistant to some disease that's in another species. And we can take that and make it part of my DNA. So that's synthetic biology. You've altered my DNA, but it's going to extend my life. So yes, absolutely. There's one big caveat that we need to put around that, however, and that is all of these technological capacities depend on access. So if you don't have access to healthcare, or if you can't afford the technology, if you're locked out of it, if it's tied to your employment, and as we've seen in this pandemic, a massive amount of people lose their jobs, or they're underemployed, and then you can't have access to health insurance or health care. The technology might exist, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to benefit from it. So this is just another reason why we always have to think about technology as not just being technical. It's social, it's political, it's economic, it's a comprehensive issue. And we need to really conceptualize it and work it and execute it in that comprehensive way if we want to actually truly benefit from this technology.
Well, you gave us a lot to consider, Dr. Johnson. We appreciate your time. We as a damage prevention industry have been focused for a long time on improvement and on the use of technology, both machine and meaning the traditional sense of machine, and computers, to try to drive changes for the positive. changes that will, we hope, improve efficiencies like time and money, but safety is what we're very much about. And we appreciate you keeping your thumb on the pulse of things and asking the questions that are being asked and encouraging us to ask those kinds of questions too. So thank you so much for being with us. Very, very thought-provoking with what you shared today. So,
well, thanks for the invitation, and it's great to hear your thoughts and questions about this. So thank you again.